Here's a question that sounds like a conspiracy, but it's actually a math problem wearing a suit. If every country on Earth is in debt, who the hell are the creditors? Like, seriously. If the whole world owes money, then to whom? Aliens? A secret vault under Switzerland? Some billionaire sitting on a throne of gold? The real answer is way stranger, and way more unsettling. The world mostly owes itself. And yet, somehow, not everyone benefits equally. That's the paradox at the heart of global public debt. It's circular, it's massive, it's everywhere, and it's the invisible engine of modern life. Because public debt isn't just some spreadsheet line item. It's not bad government behavior. It's not a mistake we're all supposed to fix if we just tighten our belts. Public debt is the architecture of the modern world. And the plot twist? If governments actually paid it all off, a lot of the system we call the economy would collapse. Public debt didn't start as a clever financial tool. It started as a desperate one. Because wars are expensive in a way normal politics just can't handle. Back in the late 1600s, England needed money, fast. War financing was like trying to run a marathon while lighting cash on fire. So the Bank of England was created, and the government started issuing long-term bonds, basically IOUs backed by the state. That was revolutionary, because suddenly borrowing wasn't just survival, it became a signal. If you could borrow cheaply, it meant people believed your government was stable, organized, and likely to keep its promises. Debt became a weird kind of credibility score. Not just, can you pay, but, can you govern? And that logic scaled up and spread across the planet. Wars ended, budgets grew, societies modernized, and debt didn't disappear. It became normal. So let's go back to the opening question: if everyone's in debt, who's holding the receipts? Here's the truth that surprises almost everyone: most public debt is held domestically. Meaning a huge chunk of a country's government bonds are owned by its own banks, pension funds, insurance companies, mutual funds, and sometimes even its own citizens through retirement accounts. So when people say, our country is drowning in debt, what they often mean is, our country owes money to the institutions that manage our savings. And it gets even weirder, because countries also lend to each other. You get this global loop: Nation A holds some of Nation B's bonds, Nation B holds Nation C's bonds, Nation C holds Nation A's bonds, a circular system. A financial Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail, except the snake is the global economy, and the tail is trust. Now, when a government borrows, it doesn't just get money. It sells bonds. And buyers ask one brutal question: do we trust you? If markets trust you, you borrow at low interest rates. If they don't, rates rise fast. And once rates rise, your debt becomes heavier not because the number changed, but because the cost of carrying it did. That's why interest rates are like gravity in the debt universe. A small change can pull an entire country into a crisis spiral. Interest isn't just the cost of money. In the public debt world, interest is basically rent paid to keep the system stable, rent for credibility, rent for access to capital, rent for the ability to keep society running without everything freezing every time revenue dips. Now we get to the most misunderstood character in the whole story: the central bank. Because markets are one half of the debt machine, and central banks are the other half. Central banks can create money, and they often use that power to buy government bonds, especially during crises. Think about what that means: the government issues debt, the central bank buys it with newly created money. So the state, in a sense, is buying its own IOU with money it just invented. That sounds like cheating. It sounds like it shouldn't work. But it works because the system isn't built like a household budget. It's built like a circulatory system, and the central bank is the heart pump. When private demand collapses, central banks step in to keep bonds liquid, rates manageable, and the whole structure from seizing up. And this is where the story flips. Debt doesn't just finance money, debt becomes money. Here's the line that changes how you see everything. A lot of what we call money is ultimately a promise. A claim. An IOU that someone else recognizes as valuable. Government bonds are one of the cleanest forms of that promise. They're standardized, tradable, and backed by taxing power. That's why, globally, government bonds are treated as some of the safest assets on earth. They're the foundation underneath banks, pensions, insurance companies, and money markets, the plumbing of global finance. So here comes the twist nobody expects. Public debt is not designed to be paid off like a credit card. It's designed to be rolled over, refinanced, renewed. Old bonds mature, new bonds replace them. The debt continues not because the government is lazy, but because the system needs those safe assets to exist. That's why the idea of finally paying off all the debt sounds responsible but could be catastrophic. If you erase the safest asset in the system, you don't create stability, you create a vacuum. Where do pensions park their money? Where do banks store safe reserves? What becomes the baseline collateral markets rely on? If government bonds vanish, a huge chunk of modern finance loses its anchor. The uncomfortable truth is, debt isn't a bug. It's a feature. So what keeps this rolling IOU civilization from collapsing? One word: trust. Trust that governments will tax. Trust that institutions will honor contracts. Trust that courts work. Trust that tomorrow looks mostly like today. And when that trust cracks, things unravel fast. We've seen it. Countries like Greece, Argentina, and Sri Lanka faced severe crises when confidence collapsed and refinancing became impossible. Different places, different triggers, same mechanism. Trust erodes, borrowing becomes expensive, refinancing gets harder, crisis accelerates. That's why public debt is ultimately psychological. It's not just numbers. It's belief. Now here's the part nobody likes saying out loud. This system can stabilize societies and still feel unfair, because interest payments create a quiet upward flow of money. When governments pay interest, that money comes from taxes and public revenue, plainly, from workers and consumers. And it goes to the holders of the bonds, often institutions, investors, and large funds. So even if the country owes itself, the benefits aren't evenly distributed inside that self. Debt can act like an inequality machine. Taxpayers fund the interest, asset owners receive it. Zoom all the way out and you see the real transformation. Public debt started as war financing, became credibility, became the foundation of markets, and eventually became intertwined with money itself. The modern system blurred the line between debtor and creditor so much it looks like a magic trick. But it's not magic. It's a balance, held together by trust, refinancing, and the belief that government bonds are safe enough for the world to build on top of them. So the next time you hear, the national debt is out of control, remember, yes, debt can be dangerous. Yes, mismanagement can wreck lives. Yes, trust can shatter, and when it does, collapse can be brutal. But debt is also the scaffolding of the modern economy, the quiet deal we all live inside. We accept promises as money, as long as we believe those promises will be honored. And that's the real story of global public debt. The world owes itself, but the system only works as long as we keep believing in it.